Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard here this evening as we have late developing news that I totally missed from the fourth period. And David Payne getting things going here for us today, talking about Mr. John Gibson and Evander Kane and how that whole situation ties together for our Edmonton Oilers. So there's plenty to dig into here, friends. What you'll hear from me right now is you might want to skip ahead to what you're here for because there's a lot of prelude to getting to that John Gibson deal that the Edmonton Oilers very well may be circling at current as we try to understand what is going on with Evander Kane. So with that said, let me self-promote myself a little bit. If you are new to the channel or a returning viewer and haven't hit that button yet, I definitely tell you to hit that subscribe button. It just helps you get the videos that much faster, the live streams as we get towards the playoffs. And oh, by the way, this whole subscribe thing is free to do as long as you have a YouTube account. So what we need to know right off the hop, let's go back to the graphics, is today's update comes from the latest edition presented by CCM Hockey over on the fourth period, and David Payne getting us going with what was a healthy update on the Vancouver Canucks to begin with, a Anaheim Ducks update on John Gibson, and then how that ties to the Edmonton Oilers as it pertains to the next 2 months. So for the Oilers, we're waiting on the status of Evander Kane. We know that. For the Oilers, we're also trying to figure out what we're exactly doing at the trade deadline, and with some helpful youth in the minor leagues, right? Philip Savoy that we talked about earlier today, and obviously a defense that has more or less steadied itself. It opens up the Oilers to maybe a different potential add at the trade deadline than maybe just that bottom six big guy we were looking for and that guy on the right hand shot top 4D. So Pagnotta definitely acknowledging that the Oilers are still fully looking to add on the top 4D, but the Oilers also, as they currently go, are waiting on that solid concrete update on Evander Kane. The Oilers need to understand what Evander Kane is and what he is at when he comes back to the lineup, whether that be in February, March, or later in April for the NHL playoffs. That there where we get to that John Gibson dealio, and where Kane is at in his recovery. So like I said, what he will be when he comes back and where he's at currently are two big factors for the Edmonton Oilers when it comes to figuring out what exactly their trade deadline plans are come here early March. We are 2 months and a day away from the trade deadline at current, so just keep that as a refresher for you as we move on to the next one, and it pretty much determines does Evander Kane's status. If the Oilers add on D, again, they can add a superstar if they capture his full LTIR, right? They can go out there and capture a $5.25 million player on the LTIR. The Oilers have also acquired a bunch of cap space this year by floating around and accumulating over the course of the season by staying just under the NHL salary cap. So that's been good news as well. So basically, the Oilers have two directions they can go. They can make a minor move up front, add a stud D-man for the Kane LTIR capture, or alternatively, also get a defenseman and a netminder. The minor forward move, again, there is a potential that you could add Nick Bjugstad, who I continue to harp home on, for as little as $500K against the Caps. So the Oilers realistically could go three-player hunting here, and if they do look at the goaltending market, it appears, according to today's update, that John Gibson, since his availability is known in Anaheim, there is potential that Anaheim is looking to retain half of his next 2 years' salary at $3.2 million. There is potential that the Oilers are very much so in on John Gibson. They keep floating around, waiting for the right deal to come up, but the big part for us is we do need to keep in mind what is the status of Evander Kane. As far as we know, there is potential he's back in February, March, but if the Oilers decide to shelf him until April, it's been done in the NHL before, and it's one team Stanley Cups, and I like winning Stanley Cups. At least that's what I've been telling myself for some odd years now, so why not? Let's go get this done. Let's figure it out, right? So what that does is Kane's status will ultimately determine, as the Oilers stay in on the talks with John Gibson and the Anaheim Ducks, if the Oilers make the John Gibson trade, right? This all comes full circle. Right now, the status is we're waiting on an update. The Oilers will have that, I'm sure, soon, and then that will determine what happens here over the next 2 months. Again, there is a potential that we get an Evander Kane update, and it's positive, and he'll be back late February, and away we go. And then all of a sudden, he's shelved until April. We've seen this happen multiple times before in the Ken Holland era, mostly with Kailer Yamamoto and Jesse Puljujärvi. So we'll see if this is the case for the Edmonton Oilers and their goaltending core. Again, this is not to say that Calvin Pickard or Stuart Skinner are going to lose their job. This would very much so indicate for an Edmonton Oilers team that they ride a three-man goalie rotation throughout the rest of the regular season, because you can't afford to lose Calvin Pickard, especially when you've built up this elite goaltending depth that the Oilers would have if you add in John Gibson. You cannot afford to lose Cal Pickard. So what you're going to do there, and I always say it wrong, Cal Pickard, you can't afford to lose him, so you keep him up at the NHL level, costs you $1 million over the cap, and away you go. Just kind of deal with the effects of the LTIR for the rest of the year. And as long as you capture everything right, I mean, we've given Bill Scott some hard times here as Edmonton Oilers fans, but he came up aces a couple seasons ago for the Oilers to acquire Matthias Ekholm, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. And if the Oilers do indeed find out some bad news as it pertains to Evander Kane, or maybe good news as it pertains to Evander Kane, that he will be out of the lineup until at least Game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, oh boy, can the Oilers do a lot of damage. And that may very well include a player they are circling right now alongside Carolina in John Gibson, to see if they can go out there and work over a trade with the Anaheim Ducks, get John Gibson in at 3.2 or some number close to that, and allow themselves to really go out there and do a job in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, if you're going to tell me the Oilers went to Game 7 of the finals last year with Stuart Skinner and Cal Pickard in net, and you're going to tell me now we're going to have three options, one of which includes John Gibson, I think that's pretty insane goaltender depth for an Edmonton Oilers team that really, outside of maybe back in 05-06, haven't had three strong options to go to. And that's saying a lot, because Ty Conklin turned over that puck behind the net and ultimately cost us the Stanley Cup. But hey, that's just me. Conklin had just a fine career and should have never been in that spot to begin with. But again, random things happen, and Marc-Andre Bergeron runs a player into Dwayne Rolson for some odd reason. I don't get it. You don't get it. We still don't understand how we didn't celebrate a Stanley Cup in 2006. But that is the update for today, friends. The Oilers working on a John Gibson trade, however, kind of at the preliminary stages, as they just circle around the player, waiting for the deal to be right and the time with Evander Kane to be right as well. For right now, though, I'm going to retire for the night and get on some sleep. I'm up on out of here. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you in the morning to talk about them Vancouver Canucks for some reason. Stay tuned.